Hello, I'm Tereza. Today I'll show you how to make passion fruit and milk chocolate entremet. My entremet consists of Daaz cake, hazelnut crunch, passion fruit crema, milk chocolate Bavarian cream, milk chocolate mirror glaze, and milk chocolate decorations. Daaz cake. First I'm gonna make Daaz cake. I will put toasted hazelnut flour, sifted powdered sugar and flour into a bowl and stir with a whisk until combined. Now I'll make French meringue from egg whites and sugar. I'll put egg whites into a bowl of a stand mixer fitted with whisk attachment. I'll mix on medium speed until soft peaks form. Then I'll gradually add sugar and continue whisking until meringue becomes firm. Now I'm gonna add half of dry ingredients into the meringue and mix with a silicone spatula. I will add remaining dry ingredients and continue mixing until the mixture becomes uniform. I will pipe my Daaz mixture into 16 cm, which is 6 inches cake ring, using 10 mm, which is 3/8 of an inch tip. I'll bake it at 180 degrees centigrade, which is 350 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 10 to 15 minutes until golden. Then I'll take it out and leave it to cool down. While my Daaz is cooling, I'll make hazelnut crunch. To make hazelnut crunch, besides hazelnut paste and milk chocolate, I will need feuilletine, French biscuit crunch. It may be difficult for you to find feuilletine in your neighborhood store, so I will show you how to make it at home. You can make a large batch, but store it in a well-sealed container because it tends to soak moisture. Feuilletine. To make feuilletine, I'll put melted butter, egg whites, powdered sugar and flour into a bowl. I will stir with a whisk to combine. Then I'll mix with my hand mixer until the mixture becomes uniform. There shouldn't be any lumps in the mixture. I'll pour the mixture onto a paper-lined baking tray. Then I'll spread it as thinly as possible using my small spatula. I'll bake at 180 degrees centigrade, which is 350 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 5 to 7 minutes until golden. My feuilletine is done and cooled, so now I'll crush it into small pieces. Make sure you store it in a well-sealed container. Hazelnut crunch. To make hazelnut crunch, I've placed hazelnut paste into a bowl. I'll add melted milk chocolate, toasted chopped hazelnuts and feuilletine. I will mix with a silicone spatula until well combined. I'll transfer the mixture on cooled Daaz cake. Then I will distribute it using my small spatula. I'll put everything in the freezer to set. Passion fruit crema. Next thing I'm gonna do is make passion fruit crema. I'll soak gelatin in cold water. As soon as my gelatin softens, I'll take it out and squeeze to get rid of the excess water. I'll put passion fruit puree, whole eggs, egg yolks and sugar into a saucepan and stir to combine. I will insert the probe of my digital candy thermometer into the mixture and cook on medium heat, stirring constantly until the mixture reaches 80 degrees centigrade, which is 176 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, I'll remove the pan from the stove. I'll run the mixture through a sieve to remove pieces of curdled eggs. Then I'll add soaked gelatin and stir until it melts. Finally, I will mix in softened butter. I will mix my passion fruit crema with immersion blender to emulsify. Then I'll pour it on top of the frozen hazelnut crunch. I'll shake to distribute the crema evenly. Then I'll put everything back in the freezer to set. Milk chocolate mirror glaze. To make milk chocolate mirror glaze, I'll soak gelatin in cold water. As soon as my gelatin softens, I'll take it out and squeeze to get rid of the excess water. I'll put water and sugar into a saucepan and cook until it boils. I'll add glucose syrup and insert the probe of my digital candy thermometer into the syrup. When the temperature reaches 103 degrees centigrade, which is 217 degrees Fahrenheit, I'll remove the mixture from the stove and pour it over the condensed milk. I will mix with a whisk to combine. I'll add soaked gelatin and stir with a whisk until melted. Then I will add milk chocolate. I'll blend my glaze with immersion blender until it becomes uniform. Then I'll cover it with cling film and leave it in the fridge overnight. Tomorrow my glaze will be ready for use. Milk chocolate Bavarian cream. To make milk chocolate Bavarian cream, I'll soak gelatin in cold water. As soon as my gelatin softens, I will take it out and squeeze to get rid of the excess water. I'll briefly whisk egg yolks and sugar. Then I will put milk and cream into a saucepan. When the steam starts to appear, I will remove the pan from the stove. I will temper the yolk mixture with approximately half of the heated mixture. I will stir well with a whisk. Then I'll return the mixture into the pan and I'll give it a light stir. I'll put the saucepan on the stove, insert the probe of my digital candy thermometer into the mixture and cook, stirring constantly until the temperature reaches 84 degrees centigrade, which is 183 degrees Fahrenheit. At that point, I will remove the pan from the stove. I will add soaked gelatin and stir until it melts. Then I'm gonna strain hot crema and glaze into milk chocolate. I will wait for about 1 minute until the hot mixture melts the chocolate. Then I will blend the mixture with immersion blender until it becomes uniform. This mixture is crema and glaze base for my Bavarian cream. I'll scrape the sides of the bowl with a whisk to unify my cream. I will leave this mixture to cool down to approximately 30 degrees centigrade, which is 86 degrees Fahrenheit. I've put whipped cream into a bowl of a stand mixer fitted with whisk attachment. I'll mix on medium speed until soft peaks form. My anglaise base is cooled, and now I will pour it into whipped cream. I'll mix with a silicone spatula until the mixture becomes uniform. Assembly. I will run my small knife between my frozen insert and the mold. Then I'll remove it from the mold. Now I will line 18 cm, which is 7 inches cake ring with acetate strip. I will put it onto the cake board so the insert is exactly in the middle of the mold. I'll check that with my wooden popsicle stick that is 10 mm, which is 3/8 of an inch wide. Now I'll pour milk chocolate Bavarian into the mold. To prevent leaking, I will pour only a small quantity, just to cover the bottom of the mold. Then I'll put everything in the freezer for 5 minutes until it sets. The bottom layer is set, so I'll fill the mold all the way to the top. I will remove the bubbles from the surface of the cream with a toothpick. Now I will put it back in the freezer until it becomes frozen solid. Milk chocolate decorations. To make milk chocolate decorations, I've melted cocoa butter in the microwave on low heat. I will add yellow liposoluble food coloring and mix until it completely melts. I will leave this to cool to 32 degrees centigrade, which is 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I've put 2 wide acetate strips onto a parchment paper. I'll dip my brush into yellow cocoa butter and splatter it onto the acetate using my finger. I recommend wearing a glove so the color doesn't get under your fingernails. I will leave this to set. I've put my tempered milk chocolate into a piping bag without tip, and now I'll pipe different sized blobs onto one acetate strip. Make sure you leave enough space between the blobs. I will cover the chocolate with another acetate strip. Then I'm gonna gently press each blob using a glass. You can use anything with flat bottom. I will put my discs in the fridge to completely set. To make the chocolate strip, I've placed an acetate strip 56 cm, which is 22 inches long, and 2.5 cm, which is 1 inch wide, onto a parchment paper. I will splatter the strip with yellow cocoa butter using my brush. Then I will leave it to set completely. I will pipe some tempered milk chocolate onto the colored acetate strip. Then I will spread it using my small spatula. I will immediately pick up my strip and put it onto a clean surface. I will leave it for a couple of minutes until it starts to set. I will tape another clean acetate strip around 18 cm, which is 7 inches round cake ring. Then I will place the chocolate strip around it and put it in the fridge to completely harden. Glazing and decorating. To properly prepare the glaze, you need to follow the procedure as follows. Melt your milk chocolate mirror glaze in the microwave on low heat until the temperature reaches 40 degrees centigrade, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Leave it to cool down to 35 degrees centigrade, which is 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Use the glaze immediately. I've removed my entremet from the mold and put it onto a smaller ring mold. Now I'll pour my milk chocolate mirror glaze on my entremet and leave the excess glaze to drip down. I've transferred my entremet onto a cake board and now I will decorate it with my milk chocolate strip, which I'm gonna gently place around the bottom of the entremet. Then I will insert different sized chocolate discs along the edge of the entremet. I would advise you to store your entremet in the fridge for a couple of hours and let it defrost slowly and gradually. There, my passion fruit and milk chocolate entremet is done. I hope that you liked my video and that it was informative and fun to watch. Until next time, my dear sweetness lovers, I wish you all the best and remember, create sweetness all day long because sweetness is happiness. See ya!